Hello at the first feature competition once again. I'm Edvinas, one of the programmers at Black Nights Film Festival. And today, outside, you don't see it, is snowiest day in Tallinn. And we have a 40th guest who arrived to us from New Zealand. And I suspect that Punch, your debut film, was the probably longest to complete, to fight for it. But I'm firstly curious to know your personal connection to this story. I read this already, but this is for you extremely personal and probably very painful, as much as you can talk.
Sure. So my partner was a boxer, came from a boxing family, and he died of AIDS in 1997. I loved him very much. And when he died, his father, he didn't want his father to know he was dying. And his father and he had a very difficult relationship. And his father found him and came to see him at the hospice. And he sat by his bed for 20 minutes and couldn't touch him. And when he left, I said to Kevin, someday I'll make a story of this where the father and son, where it will be all right. And he said, no, you won't, because you don't suck up to people enough. He said, because I'm not a very compromising person. And so, and since then, so I'm a gay man, and I've been arrested several times in my country fighting for our rights. We have rights now. But I also work at a university, and so many of our young queer people come to study, and I help them with their theses. So I keep watching the same stories over and over again of a world that says everything's fine, everyone has matching wedding suits and pride parades, but underneath that everything's not always fine. And so I tried to make this story one that was very beautiful and also difficult and had hope. So that was the reason why.
And here in our competition, we wanted to embrace as wide geographically, but also to touch as many different themes. And Punch's LGBTQ film. I'm curious, how is situation with LGBTQ films in New You
We've only ever had one other feature film made, and it never went to cinema. So this is the first time. And as you mentioned, it took 15 years to get this film made, but I don't give up. And it's had a very good response. It's had a very good response, although some people have found a couple of scenes in it difficult, just because they try to tell the truth. So it's been, it's been wonderful to see a story of our nation talking to our nation, and it's got a very interesting cultural thing, like a character Whetu in it, who's indigenous. We don't use the word gay in Māori to describe. So what same-sex attraction is associated with takotapui, which means it's not just sexual, it's spiritual and on many, many levels. So it's much more complicated. And so there's a takotapui man and a young gay man, and they fall in love. So it looks at different cultures, the way that they perceive being gay together.
Yeah, before returning to Tallinn, I attended a Ras Film Festival, and one Romanian director pitched his new film, and it's also LGBTQ, and he gave us statistics. What in Romania, 70% of population would hate this film immediately.
Wow.
And do you think Punch has a chance to be embraced?
Yes. So I'm an optimistic man. But yes, because it also tells a story of a son with an alcoholic father where the son becomes the father of the father. So it tries to put an LGBTQ story inside another world. And it's interesting, the audience response has been very high from women. have related very strongly to the film, and I think partly because it's hopeful. It doesn't end how you imagine, but it has hope. It has the. I think this.
Yeah.
I think that cinema can hold a mirror up to the human condition,
Yeah.
and even if we are gay or not gay, we can still relate to some things because they're transferable. So I tried to make a film that was honest about our people, but was very transferable. So its response has been pretty good. We had a couple of people, a few religious groups don't like it, but fuck them. Sorry, but I don't care.
You're free to talk whatever you want.
Really?
And I just explained what Punch was already shown in New Zealand in a leading film festival there, but in Tallinn it's an international premiere.
Yes.
And in Punch we meet two guys who I suspect were debutants, new faces in cinema.
Yes.
Jordan is for a few days here with us in Tallinn. He already swam in Baltic Sea.
Yes.
He's very brave man.
Yes.
And Conan, his partner in a film, maybe you can elaborate how you found them, and at least one of them is not gay.
So I never ask an actor about their sexuality because I don't think people have the right to ask, like I'm out, but that's a choice that I make. I auditioned, Conan took 5 years to find. I auditioned hundreds of people, but many men auditioned for it, and then when they saw what the full character, they pulled out because it's a challenge to masculinity. The way he's the strongest man in the film, but he's gender non-binary. He doesn't care about gender, so some young men found that difficult. Jordan is a soccer player.
Oh.
And so I put him into boxing training for just about a year before we shot. So there's no doubles in that. That's everything in there is him. So he was fight ready when that film was made. And we made it in the middle of COVID. We had a little window in New Zealand where we brought Tim Roth over from the US, and we were able to make it. So Jordan had been training and was a fully fledged boxer. And Conan I'd spent a lot of time with him out in the beach, in the wild part of New Zealand where this is filmed. So he felt very familiar with it. And he speaks a particular kind of Māori in the film. So he speaks English and Māori. And the Māori is a very rare dialect. So both were amazing actors. So neither had appeared in feature films. And I just went looking for them. I sat in on every audition until I found them.
You already mentioned your biggest superstar, Tim Roth, but the strength of your film, but Tim Roth is supportive actor. He doesn't steal any shine. No. He allows his young actors to get fighting spot.
Absolutely, and that's his quality. You know, Tim and I get on very well together, and he believed in the story. He believed in his character, but he made room all the time for these young men to shine. And that's a real talent. He has no ego that tries to grab the camera. And as a result, his presence is so quiet. It's very strong, but it's quiet. And it lets all three characters bloom to their fullness because no one of them is trying to seize the time off the other. And it's wonderful to work with actors like that. All of them were like that.
Yeah, Punch is an incredible film. It's also sports film inside of. But what I just heard before we started this conversation, what you drew all the film. Could you tell us more about this, your preparation for the film?
So I couldn't read or write until I was 15. So when I went through school, I was seen as a problem. Now I'm a professor at a university. I write and make films and everything, but we all have very different kinds of intelligence. And so when I was at school, when we had to read, I used to draw, and I could draw worlds, and I would imagine worlds and stories, and I still use that. When I find a story, when I begin to think through a story, I will take paper with me out to places, and I'll just draw, and I write all over it. But I draw that world can talk to me through a drawing much more slowly than it can through writing, because you are 20 minutes sitting there painting and writing and listening to what that world's saying, rather than sitting with a camera going click, 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 or writing words down. So it's a kind of embodiment, a quiet embodiment, and I think that's why the film is visually very rich, very, very visually rich, I don't write a lot of dialogue, so that what dialogue in there has an absolute purpose, but the world of the film speaks as a character.
Thank you, Welby.
Thank you
for sharing such a personal film, which strikes you and it stays in your memory for quite a long time.
Thank you.
And have a excellent premiere, international premiere, where two very bright, talented actors will be discovered, I think, and embraced by the audience. Thank you for coming to Tallinn, and we will see you at screenings of Punch, and then don't forget about our Fest feature competition films. We have 18 of them. Goodbye, Aita.